I'm Tanya, the marketing manager of PourMyBeer, and I want to thank you all for joining us for our very first webinar on how to adjust this new normal. Before we kick things off, I want to run through a few technicalities with you so you know how to really fully utilize this. First and foremost, we have enabled the live chat function that you should be able to see kind of center. So feel free to communicate with us or with each other. If you would like to test the chat now, simply let us know where you're joining from. I'm based in Colorado in a small town called Woodland Park. So if you're nearby, definitely don't hesitate to reach out after the webinar and let's grab a beer or two. I'm very excited to have so many of you on. We have seen people from all over the US, but also outside of the US to register. So we're very curious to see who all will be able to join. Since the chat can get busy really quickly, we have a separate section here specifically dedicated to questions and answers from our awesome speakers. So that should be in your right corner. While we might not get to answer all of them during our chat and our session here, since we're limited to an hour, we will make sure that we'll answer all of them later and share the answers with you. Feel free to post questions to Q&A section here on the right side, like I said, at any point of any of the conversations that we are having. And my amazing marketing assistant, Haley, that is on here with us, will choose a couple of favorites at the end of each panel and we'll bring them on. Now, before I invite our first speaker on, Steve, I just want to ask for a little bit of forgiveness in case that there are any tech difficulties, as this is our very first webinar that my team and I are running. So there might be some issues, as you have probably experienced yourself when you open the door to your restaurant, bar, or brewery for the very first time. Not everything always goes as planned. My team and I will try to ensure that the sound quality is the best, that you're able to see the speakers without any issues. But should you have technical difficulties or troubles with internet, no need to worry about anything. We will have the recording of this webinar ready for you tomorrow. Now let's invite our first speaker, Steve, on. Hi, Steve.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm very good. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great.
Awesome. So just so you know, I have a little bio here ready about you, but I was hoping you could also tell the audience here a little bit more about yourself and your experience in the hospitality industry.
Sure. So I started out in Chicago and a long time ago. You see the year. It's kind of scary to see how long it's been. But I got this crazy idea of getting into the hospitality business, and I was so convinced of my impending failure that I signed a 3-year lease at a little place in Chicago in Lincoln Park called the Corner Pocket at Halsted and Wrightwood. Anyway, it didn't fail, kept going, ended up opening a brew pub, Burnt City, back in 2012, along with a production facility. And then in 2019, we moved into District Brew Yards, where we now are, which is really the first of its kind. We have a collective 4 breweries here at District Brew Yards, all making beer out of the same space, including Burnt City, which is our brand, Around the Bend, Bulldog Beer Company, and Casa Humilde, which is Humble House in Spanish. And in our beer hall, we employ PourMyBeer as the way we give beer or sell beer to our customers. And it's been fantastic. We first were introduced to PourMyBeer a few years ago, and then it was a question of how are we going to do the concept in order to have it fit perfectly into what we've done, and we could not be more pleased.
Awesome. Well, you already jumped a little bit to the next question, but I would love to hear just a little bit more about your awesome establishment. I also have a little slide here so people and attendees can get an idea of how awesome the venue is. I definitely recommend, by the way, everyone to check it out if you ever find yourself in Chicago. Can you tell us maybe a couple of main points, what brought you to really start District Brew Yard?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, sorry to jump ahead. I get so excited about talking about it.
You're good.
Anyway, so yeah, like I said, we're 4 breweries. It's really the first of its kind. And I mentioned the breweries. And what's great is we can all talk and discuss what we're making. All the brewers get together to talk about different recipes, how things work. And it's really a unique situation because each brewery has its own beer wall with 10 taps. And we also have a shop where people can get the beer they tried on the wall. They can get that to go in 16-ounce cans. So it's been great, even though things have been tough during COVID, which I know we're going to get into. We've still been able to sell a lot of beer out of our shop at retail.
That's fantastic to hear. I'm glad to hear that. And I've myself visited District Brew Yards way too many times. Unfortunately, didn't get to expense all those trips, but have to say that it's an amazing venue and really fun place to visit. And I don't think that there's any other concept in the country that really has 4 breweries under one roof, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's the first of its kind because it's very difficult just from a licensing perspective and also just to figure out how to allocate resources to each brewer. So it's taken some growing pains, but we were very, very happy with the way it ended up.
Got it. Okay, well, now let's get to what we really came here for, and let's talk a little bit about this new normal. So can you describe your experience with the new COVID-19 world guidelines in your establishment?
Sure. So when we first started District Brew Yards, we had sort of a line that we always lived by, which was nobody comes between you and your beer. And that was really more about judgment, I think, than anything else, because I didn't like going into a craft beer bar or brewery and feel like I was being judged based on what beer I was ordering. So when COVID happened, it was a nice pivot because now no one comes between you and your beer means you don't have an interaction with a server. So that was a huge positive for us when we were able to reopen. And what we did was with COVID, obviously we had to close for several months here in Chicago. And then when we were able to reopen finally, the process changed a little bit where originally we have to check people in and we get a credit card to tie to a PourMyBeer card, as most of you probably already know. And then we added another station that we called the COVID station, which basically we explained all of the new procedures with how to deal with COVID and safe practices. And that worked extremely well because we also started employing, I don't know if you want to introduce this, but the tapkin, which is a napkin for the tap so that no one has to touch the tap. And if unfortunately, if somebody does, we're there to clean it up and make sure there's no interaction between guests. We use single pour cups. We did unfortunately have to move to plastic as opposed to glass, but with single pour cups, tapkins, only one person standing at the wall at a time, and then people keep their masks on and then go to their table and then drink a beer. Interestingly enough, we've seen that now with COVID, people take fewer trips to the taps but pour more beer. So that's kind of an interesting little side note.
I guess they save the plastic. They save some of the
plastic
cups for you.
Bigger pours, but fewer trips. And we, as I think, I don't know if you had a picture of that one, but we have a giant parking lot that we converted to an outdoor patio where we had socially distanced tables, 10 feet apart, seats for about 200. So I think in general, we're able to accommodate more guests in a safe way. And we've been pretty happy with what we've been able to do.
Could you give us a little timeline starting in March in terms of what's been happening with your operations regarding closures, government restriction, etc.?
Sure. So we were shut down completely around a year ago, middle of March, like a lot of people were. We were shut down for about 12 to 14 weeks. We were able to reopen in June, outdoor only. So that was critical that we got the outdoors. Towards I think the end of summer, we were able to do 25% occupancy, and we actually just went to 40% occupancy here in Chicago, but a limit of 50 people. So those are our limits. But I think, again, anytime people can go outside, people feel safer outside. And we have heat lamps out there, fire pits, and things like that. So it was really up until the big blizzard this week and last week with the intense cold that people were still sitting outside. So that's been
wow.
Great. Yeah.
People in Chicago are brave. Wow.
Party
Five fires over there. Let's talk a little bit more about adjusting to the new customers' expectations, because clearly in the last 12 months, the customers' expectations drastically have changed. So are you doing anything proactively to be able to track down customers in case someone has got them sick, knocking on the wood?
Exactly. We did do that at our station where people check in. We have a tracing system set up. So when people check in, we print out a check with their name on it, and then they fill in their contact information before they get basically a speech about COVID protocols. They put that we put that in a file, and we keep that until hopefully we will never need it. And in fact, we've had, I think, one case, not a customer, one case of a cook who got it outside, so we were able to contain that and not have any issues. Knock on wood. So I think that's the big thing for us is people feel incredibly safe with how we're doing things, but also there's so few interactions with staff. And what we know that was the perfect way to employ PourMyBeer is that you don't have to wait for a server to come over. You don't have to wait for a server to come over to give you a check. We have a thing where we have no tipping. So when you're ready to leave, you can drop your PourMyBeer card and just walk out the door. It's tied to your credit card. Obviously, we'll be happy to give someone a receipt. But I think the key to us was getting people the safety protocols when they walk in. And then the Tapkins, the single use, fewer interactions, I think made people feel incredibly safe, even to the biggest quote unquote germaphobe.
That makes sense. Did you survey your customers to make sure they feel safe?
We didn't take a formal survey, but we're always talking to our customers. In fact, we just had a staff meeting just now. We were talking about what's working, what's not working, and we really feel like everything has worked for us incredibly well to make people feel safe. And I think we're going to continue to do this until the CDC and the scientists say you don't have to do it anymore. We'll continue to do social distancing. We have an incredibly large place. We have a really big patio, and we have the ability to control traffic, human traffic, so that people aren't on top of each other. And again, nobody comes between you and your beer, so you determine everything on your visit here at Brew Yards.
Got it. I know that you really base your messaging on that strongly. About the food, did you have to make any adjustment to the new customer's expectation, the way you present your dishes, or really fully change menu, anything like that?
We didn't really do menu changes. We still have Lily's Q is our food purveyor, really. Charlie McKenna, who's an executive chef, who's a world champion barbecue guy, has come in and operated our food service. And it operates like a quick service restaurant where you come in, you order, your food is prepared, it's put on a tray, and then we text you when your food is ready. So the only, obviously behind the kitchen, or it's an open kitchen, so you can see people preparing your food. They're always masked, they always have gloves on. They get your food, they change, things change up. They're socially distanced back there as much as possible. We have ample testing, and we just hope that people feel safe, and we think they have, even with food preparation and food service. We think it's gone incredibly well.
Definitely. What do you think was the number one thing that made your customers feel safest?
I think the number one thing was them coming in and being able to pour their own beer and not having to interact with staff. We think that the fewer interactions with staff, the better. And I think that's where I personally think we're going to see the industry pivot towards that, where people have fewer and fewer interactions until this pandemic is over. And I think the fact that people came in, they're always wearing masks, they see the staff wearing masks, and we enforce the rules. We're pretty militant about being safe, and we think that's had a big impact, and we think people are really happy with that.
Terrific. Okay, let's move to the next section, and that's specifically more about the changes to adjusting to this new normal that you had to make on site. So what has been the most difficult part for you of adjusting to this new normal?
The biggest challenge for us is really the number of people that want to come in and can't, or the number of people that want to congregate in bigger groups. We're limited to 6 people, and so that has created problems. We're very fortunate because our business has actually, when the weather was nice, actually went up over 20% during the pandemic. So in the summer, because people just had fewer places to go and people felt incredibly safe here. So I think those were the biggest challenges. Were educating people to stay in small groups, not crowd people, and also, unfortunately, we had to get people to wait in line to get in at times.
I hear the same issue from a lot of PourMyBeer family members, so that sounds like it's a common struggle right now. What operational changes have you made that haven't been that successful, that haven't really worked too well?
Actually, knock on wood, we feel like everything has worked incredibly well. We have not gone through and said, oh, this hasn't worked, let's change that. So I feel really fortunate that the steps we took at first, and then as we continue to go through this period, everything's kind of worked pretty well, and we've been incredibly, like I said, we've been incredibly happy, and the customers seem to have liked it as well. So I think we're doing okay.
That's amazing. That's great to hear, Steve. And my last question before I have Haley hop on here and bring 2 questions from the Q&A section. What operational changes have you made that have been the most successful? If you can say just one, say a couple or 3 that really worked really well for you and that you maybe can recommend attendees to try.
Well, I think the biggest change we made and the most successful change was definitely setting up a second station prior to entering the beer hall. And for those of you who haven't come into District Brew Yards before, we have a check-in station where you tie a credit card to the PourMyBeer card, and we're giving people a lot of information at that time. And by splitting that up with sort of a check-in before they enter the beer hall, we have an entryway and a ramp, as you may recall from being in here. We set up a station, and by explaining the procedures and getting people's contact information, we are going to keep that station from now on because it gives people not just protocols on how to handle COVID, but it really helps people. You can really talk to them and get them to understand how the PourMyBeer works, what to do if they have trouble, how to pour a beer. We go through a lot of technical things with customers so they, there's an old saying, feed a person a fish, feed them for a day, teach them how to fish, feed them for a lifetime. And really our theme there is to teach them how to pour so they can pour for a lifetime.
Got it. Perfect. You're on a mission with us. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. Steve, thank you so much for answering my question. Now I'm going to have Haley pop up if she can, so she can ask a couple of her favorite questions from Q&A section.
Sounds good.
Hi, Steve. Haley from marketing here. We got a couple of questions for you. The first one is from Evan, asking if underage drinking is a concern at District Brew Yards, and if so, what have you found to be the best practice to enforce or monitor the drinking age?
Well, it's interesting because we made a decision when we first opened that we were going to be 21 and over. So we don't even allow anyone under 21 unless it's we use the term no mobile babies. And what that means is if you are a child that can walk and it's not restrained by a stroller, you can't come in. So little kids, 6, 7, or teenagers, we just don't let them in. We've made the choice because we're so worried about that, so we don't allow them even to come in. So we're an adult-only place.
Great. And then the second question is from Jack, and that is, how did you train your staff to these new COVID protocols and guidelines?
So we spent a good couple of days meeting with our staff members, explaining everything, and then we basically go through it every single day. So if there's a question about it, we've been very lucky because we've had the same staff throughout the pandemic, thanks to the PPP program, which has helped us keep all our people. We have not closed since the original closure in the spring. We brought as many people back as we could, and that's been the key to continuity. Just having the same staff members here makes it all go that much better.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So Steve, I'm going to have you turn off your camera, turn off your mic. You can take a break, grab that beer of yours. I know you like stouts. So run up. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to have John turn on his camera, if you don't mind, John, and also your microphone. Amazing. John, can you hear me?
Can you see me? I can see you. I can hear you. Perfect.
Awesome. Perfect. Terrific. And I can hear you. I can see you. So it's all good. I even have a little bio about you here too, in case that the attendees are curious. But of course, I'll have you do the same, and please share a little bit about your background with us here in the hospitality industry.
Before you get started, that's an awesome place. You should all go visit it. They do a wonderful job there. I've been in the food service industry. It's been a family thing with family. My father, growing up, he had a food truck way before food trucks were popular. He would take the food truck and do festivals and carnivals and bizarre streets of New York. When I became of age, I took the same type of food cart, and I opened it up out behind Kennedy Airport. I called it Dominic's Italian Sausage at the time. My father's name was Dominic. We decided that I got a few investors, and we signed a deal with Lowe's Home Centers, and we ended up opening up 175 Dominic's of New York in front of Lowe's Home Centers up and down the East Coast. We sold that, we franchised it, and that's how we were able to grow it to all the Lowe's centers. As time went on, we ended up doing more concepts. We opened up a deli concept that was in convenience stores. Again, we sold that afterwards. I had a coffee concept that we still own now. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we sold off everything, and I decided it was time to kind of take an early retirement and just do a few projects here and there on the side. And we got a little bored, so we decided to go open up a bar in St. Augustine, which, by the way, I'm in St. Augustine, Florida. There was one. We come from Richmond, Virginia, and there was a concept that wasn't. It was one of the competitors, and my wife and I loved it. We thought if we were ever going to open a bar, that's the way to do it. And when we decided that we wanted to go into a self-pour system, and we were in we were in a vacation town, and when we were walking down St. George Street, which was the main street that goes down that strip, we were trying to get a beer one day, and at this Irish pub, and it was ticking me off because it took forever to get service, and nobody was even in there. And all I said is, "That's it. We're going to open up a self-pour place." We started calling around and visiting various self-pour places around the country, and the people that had the PourMyBeer systems were the ones that said the best things about the product, and that's why we ended up going that route. I probably jumped ahead of you on that.
That's terrific to hear. Thank you for that intro, and thank you for that detail. Now, can you tell me a little bit more about your establishment, because it has so much more than self-pour in it. I had a pleasure to visit twice, and I'm hoping to come back as soon as I get my shot. So can you tell us a little bit more about Auggie's?
Open up Auggie's Draft Room was an interesting project for me because I've never sold in all the restaurants that I've had across my career. We've never done anything with alcohol or beer. When we first opened up, we decided that we were gonna. Oh, and on top of that, it's a vacation town, which if you're in a vacation town, it has all challenges which you never even would have figured that the issues that would the way you have to adjust your business for it. So we opened up, and we weren't going to do food. We were going to do some snacks and things like that. But because there were so many families down there and there was such an opportunity for food, we opened up Augie's, and we realized we needed to actually start doing. We needed to really create a good menu that would be really good for families. Augie's became this self-serve tap room that serves a great burger, has live music and all sports all the time. And we opened up, like you said, we opened about 2.5 years ago. First year was good. Second year was great. Third year we have COVID. That brings us to where we are now.
Definitely. Okay, so this is a good transition now that you've kind of mentioned the COVID. It's a good transition to you describing the experience with this new normal, new COVID-19 world guidelines in your establishment, and how this affected your business really.
Well, January and February, we had introduced our new menu for the Christmas right before COVID started, and it did real well. Incredibly excited because we were able to more than double our sales from the year before. Unlike a lot of your places, we actually do about 60% sales in food. And we opened up that Christmas, and Christmas is our busiest time. There's about 3 or 4 months that are super busy. Christmas is one of them, December. And we did real well, excited. January was great. February was great going into 2020 rather. And then of course COVID hit, and we had to shut down. It just like everybody else. What we did was being that we had to change our business, and we realized the limitations that we actually had to overcome within our business. And the biggest limitations that we had to come is we have a very small place. Our place is under 2,000 square feet. And when you have lots and lots of customers that come over during certain times of year, whether it be Christmas or the summer holidays, you have to be able to get them through your business as quickly as possible. So we were able to take that time and actually figure ways to get the customers through our system quicker. One of them was moving to toast. That actually helped us probably more than anything else because we're able to get the people through get the lines down quicker. And we ended up, this season, we actually ended up putting another charging station, which really helped us. And we actually got handhelds so that we can conquer the people in the line. And so we were able to take time and actually start. I'm sorry, you're going to say something?
No, I was just saying amazing. I'm sure that our friends at Toast are going to love hearing about this. Keep going. Don't want to steal your thoughts.
Sorry about that. You were actually delayed. It was hard for me to understand what you were saying. So we took that time. We were closed for maybe 11 weeks. We took that time to make the much needed adjustments to our menus and to our facility so that we can actually get the people through our place quicker. When we reopened, made to our place, we actually thought that it would be a good idea to have a little bit of fun with it. We didn't use the napkins or tapkins that I'm talking about. We actually went with just really super cheap gloves that people had to wear. We have gloves everywhere. We made big signs that said no gloves. Everybody kind of had a little bit of fun with it. They came in and everybody's walking around with these ridiculously oversized gloves, kind of playing with it and taking pictures by the signs that we have up and posting it on social media. It actually made for an interesting environment. And also on top of that, we're in Florida, and as all of you know, we're crazy down here. Everybody makes fun of us down here. The biggest problem that we had then and even to today is keeping the people. The restrictions in other restaurants are so much less than they are in ours, which is interesting because I mean there was really, we had it at about a minute, but within 2 or 3 weeks they just announced that everything was at 100% occupancy. The biggest problem we have is that, as Steve mentioned too, is stopping in the facility, especially in the draft room. That becomes the most difficult part of what we're doing there.
Could you share your experience with reopening? If I remember correctly, you were shut down till June or end of May, correct?
Yeah, about the end of May. That's correct. And the reopening was great. And just as Steve said, when we reopened, people were so hungry to go out that we from day one we ended up doing much better than we did in 2019. Quite honestly, we were shut down for all those months, and 2020 as a whole was we did over 20% than we did the entire year of 2019, even though we were shut down for 10 or 11 weeks, which is fascinating to me for it. And in our world, it was a little different. Most of the time in the vacation towns, we would see people from Europe and we'd see people from all over the world. And you'd hear it with all the different languages being spoken. Now it's just people that are hungry to get out for a quick weekend. You see them, they're coming from Orlando, they're coming from Georgia, they're coming from Miami, and that's all you're seeing coming to our places. Other than that, you're really not getting, and interesting enough, it actually made our ticket average go down because people aren't spending their vacation money, but we had so many more customers that our overall sales money. So it really was, the only thing that was difficult about it, again, was getting people to wear masks. You know, we gave out free masks at the door. If people didn't want to wear them, we gave it to them, and we were real strict about it. Getting them to wear gloves, they were actually not having an issue with that. We also implemented that each the wall. For all of you that are out there, if you're not having somebody work the wall, you're missing the boat on it. Somebody always has to work the beer wall. Money. But because of COVID, we were forced to have somebody in the draft room at all time because that's the biggest area where people are taking off their masks to try beer. And it had somebody in there, and that helped us out a lot. And we'll never turn back from that. Of course, we also went to plastic cups. And I'll tell you, and I was telling you this yesterday, we're never going back to glass. Plastic cups are just a bomb. Just to us, it's just easier. You need less employees. You don't have to deal with breakage. You don't have to it does cost a little bit more money, obviously, for the cups, but the amount of time and stress that you save, and of course, employees that you save, it's well worth it. I'm never going back to glass.
Just out of curiosity, are you using branded cups or are you just using plain cups?
We're using our branded cups.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
okay.
Auggie draft from on them.
Let's move a little bit to adjustment to new customers' expectations. Are you doing anything proactively to be able to track down customers in case someone has gotten sick?
We haven't. Well, there's no. We do things like that, but we haven't had an issue with customers. But I'll tell you, I mean, every one of our employees, with the exception of 2, have at some point in time had COVID. And it's the only thing that we've had to track down was who the employees were working with and things like that. And that was, at this point, just about everybody has had COVID within our place.
Okay, glad that they're all fine now. What was the number one? Definitely. What was the number one thing that would make your customers feel the safest? What do you consider number one? Is that the gloves?
I actually think that the thing is with wearing the gloves, and just the overall cleanliness of the place. People made a lot of comments about that, especially down in Florida, because so many are following rules like that. So many restaurants were saying, hey, down there, they don't have to wear a mask. Well, you can go back down there. Doing all the things like that. So, you get those, and I say that, it's not that many customers that say it, but you notice the ones on the other side that says, I feel so much better in here to save. And especially now, I'm beginning to notice more and more as the older generation, as the older generations are getting their vaccinations, I'm starting to see them coming back out. And again, we're in Florida. We have a lot of old people. They're starting to come out. We're seeing them in the daytime, and they feel good about that. They feel good about all the things keep them safe.
Let's talk a little bit more about the specific changes to adjust to this new normal. What do you think has been the most difficult part of adjusting to this new normal?
That's an interesting question. It's just the most difficult part was figuring out actually exactly what you're going to do and standing by it. It really wasn't that hard. Like Steve said, you figure out what you're going to do, you figure out how you're going to do it, you enforce it at your place, and there was really nothing that didn't work. We're so fortunate that it all, most of the customers are fine with it. Most of the customers we don't have an issue with. Our employees, and we have the same employees. Again, we got the PPP loan as well. We were able to retain the majority of our employees. They've been with us, many of them, since day one. So it really hasn't been an issue with all the things that we've done. And many of them, like I said, plastic cups, things like that will stay around forever. We're always going to keep plastic gloves out too. We won't force them to wear them in the future, but we'll always keep the plastic gloves around because it's going to make, especially some germ freaks, it's going to make them feel better.
Have you made any changes to your food menu?
We made a lot of changes to our food menu. Not so. Actually had the opportunity during the 11 weeks that we were closed to bring in extra equipment to do some changes that we wanted to make within the kitchen. We just had that. It was nice, as horrible as this all is. It was nice to have that opportunity after being in business for about a year and a half to kind of sit back and actually make all the changes within your business that you want to do that you can't do because you're having customers all over the place. It was actually nice to make that all happen. So we were able to make the adjustments to our menu that have been really that's worked well for us. The only other thing that we had to do was because we went from having customers that were vacationers to mostly locals. When I say locals, I mean within a couple 100 miles. And they would be more often, and they were also a lot more price conscious. We started buying beers that were a little bit on the lower end, keeping less expensive beers, so that is something that's a little bit more affordable to them. We noticed once we made that change, give them options where they can have $5 beers and $6 beers as opposed to the really expensive ones. That made a big difference in our overall sales. Huge difference in our overall sales.
What operational changes have you made that have not been successful, if any?
As far as COVID, there's really none. I mean, if we had about 6 hours, I could tell you a lot of operational changes that I've made to our business that didn't work over the years. But no, as far as COVID, everything that was working well. As long as if we can keep the weather warm, and it's been pretty warm here, we'll do well through February and the rest of.
Great. For that, just a quick reminder, we have the Q&A section here. So if you have a more specific question for John, feel free to pop it down there. Haley will bring some questions up really quickly. I have one more question here for John before I let Haley take it over. What operational changes have you made, John, that have been the most successful and work really well for you?
Are you saying as far as COVID or in general?
Yes, definitely as far as COVID, the last 12 months.
The biggest changes that we made were the one that actually worked best and actually helped us the most, probably going forward, was making sure that somebody's always working and informing and working with the customers that stay in the draft room. Steve actually made mention of it with his station. He's absolutely right. Getting more information in the customer's head so that they understand what's going on. It's very intimidating walking in to a self-serve tap room for a lot of people. And the more information you can give the customer, the more comfortable you can make that customer, the more they're going to drink. I mean, they'll stay there for hours if they have people to talk to.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that sounds like what I know, what I see very often. Excellent. I'll have Haley come up. I hope that she was able to choose a couple of her favorite questions here in the Q&A section.
Yes, we got quite a few questions for you, John. So one question from Eric was about the plastic cups that you switched over to, and asked if you had any pushback from your customers. On
the plastic cups, not at all. I was a little surprised at that myself. at the beginning, I was talking with my wife and my son-in-law, and I wanted to go with plastic cups when we first opened. And they shot me down quickly because they didn't think it was going to be high end enough. But we got quality cups and pushback, not even a little bit of a pushback, nothing. It's been great.
Awesome.
The only pushback we actually get, which is kind of silly, is we don't allow them to top. For obvious, that's the only pushback because they feel a lot of people want to use their same cup. I know it sounds silly, but they do.
Great, thank you. The second question is from Ed, and that's, do you think your self-pour beverage wall was an advantage during COVID?
Oh, no question about that. We even did a little bit of an interview with a local paper, and I said we're probably the safest bar. Well, two reasons it was. Let me go. I'll get back to that in a second. The first reason was because we were self-pour, we weren't considered a bar, so we were allowed to open when bars were not allowed to open in St. Augustine. So that helped us out a bunch. The second reason was, we told customers. I'm sorry. We did an interview and we're telling them that we're the safest place because nobody ever touches their cups. I mean, they nobody touches their drinks. They come in there, they get a card, they do everything themselves. They're wearing a glove. It's really kind of the safest place you could be. Every time when they're in crowds, everybody's wearing a mask. It works out really well.
Definitely. Great.
Wonderful. John, thank you so much. I just want to reiterate here to attendees that you're based in a small town called St. Augustine in Florida. I've gotten the pleasure to visit twice. Hopefully, as soon as I get my shot, I'm there next time. I'm there again. I love Augies, and thank you so much for your time and for answering all the questions. If you don't mind, I'll have you take a sip of your beer, mute your mic, turn off the camera.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. And Noah, can you please hop on? Amazing. I can see you. Can we hear you too?
How's it going?
Going fantastic. How is it going over there in Colorado Springs?
Good. It just started snowing, so we're looking forward to a cold day.
Oh, it started snowing here too. What a surprise. Since you're pretty close, probably not. So Noah, just like with everybody else, I have a little bio here so the attendees can see that. But if you can share a little bit about your experience in hospitality industry with us, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. So I left a long career in real estate about 10, 12 years ago and decided to chase my passion with the food industry and told myself that I was going to work every area of the restaurant that I possibly could. And work for the best and as well as the worst that I could so that I could learn everything about this industry. In doing so, found myself opening and closing multiple restaurants, learning what did and what didn't work, and was presented with the opportunity to not only become the executive chef, but the general manager, so overall operator of Beast and Brews, which does employ 100 taps utilizing the self-pour technology of PourMyBeer.
Awesome. Perfect. Now, can you tell me a little bit more about your awesome establishment? I get to be a regular, so I don't really need to hear it, but the rest of the attendees really don't live that close. So if you can tell them a bit more about Beast and Brews, that would be terrific.
Absolutely. So we're a little different than a lot of other GMB locations, as in we are a full-service restaurant. We started out as counter service when we first opened and quickly found out that the neighborhood that we're in did not accept that very well. They wanted the service style to match the food that we were preparing, which is scratch food, very hyper local food, as well as hyper local beverages with everything coming from Colorado. So January 1 of last year, we changed up our operations and went to full service with our servers at the table, as well as helping guests at the wall. Our guests still pour their own drinks, but our servers help them out in every way possible.
Perfect. Can you please describe your experience with the new COVID-19 world guidelines in your establishment and maybe give us a timeline since March?
Absolutely. So I can't imagine anybody would say that their experiences have been positive throughout this new normal, and hopefully it won't become our new normal for very long. But we've learned quite a bit throughout the process, and we were originally shut down here in Colorado March 17th of last year. We were getting ready for a big St. Patrick's Day bash, and had to put all that on hold as St. Patty's Day was the day that we were shut down to go orders only from March 17th through May 27th, if I remember correctly. At that time, we opened up to 50% capacity, and we operated 50% capacity through Black Friday of this year, and then we were shut down once again to outdoor dining only, as well as to-go orders. Nobody was allowed in dining rooms. Once they opened that back up in beginning of January, we were allowed to go to 25%. And then just last weekend, we were bumped back up to 50% in our county here in Colorado. So,
yeah, quite a roller coaster, definitely.
That has been.
Everyone on the chat here too, I'm sure it varies from state to state, but not really fun anywhere. Can we talk a little bit about adjustment to new customers' expectations? As you know, these have changed drastically in the last 12 months. So I wanted to ask if you're doing anything proactively to track down customers in case someone has gotten sick.
So directly, indirectly, yes. So when we were first allowed to reopen last May, it was required that we take reservations for contact tracing purposes. So we utilize OpenTable, and if somebody comes in without a reservation, we just make a walk-in reservation for them, which collects all their information. Thankfully, we haven't had to provide any of that to any county or state health department authorities at all, as there has not been any cases linked back to our restaurant.
Excellent, that's good. Knocking on the wood. Did you pay your customers to make sure that they feel safe, or did you maybe just chat with a few regulars?
Yeah, we have a large, as you know, we have a large regular customer base that comes in all the time. So we have great conversations with them. We never did a formal survey, but we do visit with everybody. And, I'm sure everybody else has the same customer or feelings as everybody's got their own personal opinions on whether it's safe or not safe and the mask usage or not. But we follow the state guidelines, and the state tells us it's safe and it keeps us open. So that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. What do you think was the number one thing that would make your customers feel the safest during this new normal?
The fact that they have less interaction with a bartender when pouring their own drinks, especially when we have 100 taps. They're able to grab their own glassware, pour their own drinks. If we have a lot of customers, sometimes they'll come up and say, "Hey, I completely forgot to grab a napkin to touch the tap. I'm so sorry." So we have these, they're called table turners. It's a sanitizing wipe that we use from our smallware supplier. And, it allows us to visibly sanitize the screens and the handles in front of guests, and that does make them feel safer.
Absolutely, definitely. Anything else you would want to add towards the adjustment to new customers' expectations?
No, I've heard a lot of people using the plastic glassware, and that was something that we had considered as well, but decided against it. That way we could keep our dishwashers employed, and the plastic glassware just didn't meet our higher end standards for the restaurant. Personally, I wish that we could use them, but I feel that our guests would really push back on it.
That makes sense. Okay, let's move to specifically changes to adjust to this new normal on site. What was the most difficult what was the most difficult part of adjusting to this new normal for you?
The most difficult part for us and our guests is definitely the mask usage. Currently in our county, you have to have a mask on if you're not at your table. You can remove it while you're at the table, but once you get up. So we have a lot of people trying to test the beers and reuse their glass at the wall. And we have to constantly police that and let them know, hey, you can grab a sample, but you have to take it back to your table to try. You can't stand up here and try it and then use the same glass to pour from. So
that definitely makes sense, and sounds like something I've been seeing at quite a few PourMyBeer locations. Can you tell me what changes have you made? Have you tried that haven't been that successful, if any?
None really. I mean, other than the food area, we went to a lot of family meals for a while, and they were successful for a minute, but we've gotten rid of that primarily now, just because our kitchen can't keep up with that as well as the guests in the dining room at the same time. We're just not set up to do two concepts at once.
Got it. Did you make any other changes to your menu?
We did. I took the time while we were shut down to do a complete menu overhaul. And it actually, we're seeing, even though we have reduced capacity, we're seeing a much larger guest average since we've reopened. And since we've reopened this dining room since the last shutdown in November, we're actually seeing higher average shifts than pre-COVID as well.
Okay, great. What are some operational changes that you have made that have been the most successful, that have worked really well for you and you will continue?
One of them would definitely be the reservations. It's a lot easier for us to plan. Prior to COVID, we were a first come, first served basis only. Friday and Saturday nights was standing room only, and now it's a lot easier to schedule out our shifts, especially being a full service restaurant and not instead of counter service. So it's helped us save on labor quite a bit as well.
Got it. Makes sense. Okay, I'm going to pass the word to Haley now so she can pull up 2 questions from Q&A section.
Hi, Noah. Our first question is from Ryan, and he's interested in how PourMyBeer works in a seated and served environment. So could you have your waitstaff load the cart at the table?
So that is the one struggle that we have is getting cards into the guest hands in a timely manner during a busy shift. So my server assistants and hosts will actually get cards started while the guest is waiting for their server to greet them. That way they can start pouring beers if our servers are backed up. I keep pushing Tanya to poke the team to enable us to make pour cards at the table, which would be great. Another thing that we would love to see is if OpenTable would allow the integration in order to save a credit card so we could have them pre-made when the guests get there.
Okay, the second question is from Eric, and he asked if you're offering any sleeves or gloves to customers when they're pouring.
So we're not using the sleeves or gloves, but we have napkin stations all around the restaurant and all around our beer walls, and then large signs that say, don't touch the taps without a napkin between it.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Noah, just to add something, as you know, Toast and PourMyBeer have so far right now they are our smoothest POS integration, and we continue working on it. So hopefully we can really get to the place where you're going to be able to make the cards at the table fast. Both
Absolutely.
teams have time. We're working on that, but there's so many things to work on. So
there's so many integrations you guys have right now, so it's fantastic.
Exactly. We're trying our best. Awesome. Well, that's terrific. Thank you so much, Noah, for sharing your knowledge with us. Since we have a couple extra minutes, I just wonder if you want to add anything else here, any tip that has worked well for you, or some struggle that you found a good solution, how to work it around, anything like that?
For us, the biggest thing is just, and I'm sure everybody struggles with this, is the customer education of properly pouring. We have people all the time telling us that our system is overcharged, and it's just because they're not reading the instructions that are on the TVs or on the back of the beer card, and they'll set the glass underneath and just open the tap all the way, and then get upset when they've got 6 inches of foam in their glass. So I think it was Steve that had mentioned they have somebody at the beer wall every shift, and that's a great idea as long as you can afford that staffing. Right now our servers are charged with keeping up with that, and sometimes we do struggle with it.
I do see, though, I have to say personally, I do see that they're on the top of it, and as long as they see somebody at the wall, most of the time they're like checking out if does this person know? If they know, they just keep walking and do their thing. But if they see it's the first timer, they just right away like, hey, by the way, 45 degrees magical angle you want to use. So I've been seeing that quite a bit, and I think your staff is doing a terrific job at that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, unless you have anything else to add, I also want to thank you, just like our 2 awesome speakers before you. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for hopping on. We might have a few other questions that we were not able to answer here, but we'll follow up on those later, and we'll just share those with attendees after the webinar is over. Thank you so much, Noah.
That's good. Thank you.
Bye. You have a good day. Awesome. So I just wanted to really thank everyone for attending. As I said earlier at the beginning of the webinar, we will have this recording available hopefully tomorrow. And I hope you found this helpful and can apply some of what you've learned to your own operations. And don't worry, even if you didn't get to take any detailed notes, because like I said, we'll follow up not only with the recording, but we'll also follow up with a page with those extra questions that we got that we didn't really get to answer. And just a little release here, a little secret. In 2 months, we are planning to host another webinar. This one will be on how to execute different beverages on taps. Particularly, this one will be focused on cocktails on taps, but we'll also talk about wine on taps and its benefits, particularly financial benefits. So definitely stay tuned. If you have any other question that you would like to ask, don't hesitate to reach out to me or to us actually by emailing cheers@pourmybeer.com. And thank you guys, everyone, for attending. Cheers, everyone. Have a good day. Happy Wednesday.